yourself.
Thank you, David. Morning, everybody. Happy World Product Day. I am Michelle Ross. I am the General Manager here at Xero for our product practice and coaching team. And we are going to share a little bit today about how we're growing our people and our practice from little old Aotearoa as we grow Xero globally. So we'll get cracking if that's okay. So this is Xero for those who have been living under a rock for the last 10 years. Xero is a global platform that is designed to help small businesses do what they need to do every day. The idea is that we are there to save our small business owners and their advisors time and ultimately enable their success. Our purpose, which is something that we talk about quite a lot here at Xero, is to make life better for people. Make life better for people in small business, their advisors, their communities. But we also talk about helping people to do the best work of their life here at Xero, and that's something that we're really passionate about. And just to round it off so that you're all aware of how we do what we do at Xero, our vision is to be the most insightful and trusted small business platform. So just to tell you a little bit about our timeline, because it's kind of an interesting story, right? Xero was founded in a little Wellington apartment. Big shout out to Wellington down there, tuned in at the moment. 2006, Rod Drury and an ex-colleague of ours, Craig Walker, founded the company. It was, I believe, if I'm getting this right, Wellingtonians, so tell me off later if I've got it wrong. It was flat 404 Willis Street, I think number 60. But it's been a really exciting journey since then. We have recently cracked $1.1 billion in operating revenue. That happened for the first time in the most recent financial year. And we're pretty excited about the potential of Xero as an organization. But look, as we've grown our revenue, we've also grown our teams, both organically and via acquisitions. So we're now at the point where we are spread across 6 countries, 14 offices, loads of remote locations, and a team that numbers around about 4,000, I think, at last count. So just over 4,000, 2,000 of which work directly on our products for our customers. And as fantastic as that growth is, our rapid growth has kind of introduced a number of challenges. And those challenges are things that our team is really interested in solving for. We often talk about Xero being a bit like an awkward teenager at this stage, kind of coming to terms with what it wants to be when it grows up. And look, it's fair to say that the relentless growth that we have been pursuing is at the heart of loads of the challenges that we're experiencing. Look, from our team's ability to form around fast forming strategy, I guess, to the amount of bandwidth that's consumed by hiring all the time and recreating our teams and reforming our teams. And if you couple that with kind of what we're looking at as a really wide geographical spread, and quite honestly, a long-standing culture of autonomy, we're facing some problems when it comes to collaboration, communication, and ultimately our ability to ship really valuable products for our customers. And so that's a problem set that we're really interested in leaning into. When we first started thinking about solving this problem, we made a really big point of listening first. And I see lots of alumni showing up in our community here and some present team members too, so they'll all be familiar with this. We started off by talking to loads and loads of Xeros about what was going on for them. We talked about their perspective on what was happening as they go about building our software and some of the challenges they were facing. And what we found was that product Xeros, we call our people Xeros here, were often describing how difficult it was to perform outside of their nuclear team unit. And that led it to a hypothesis that I guess the lack of common understanding and clarity about how we should collaborate to make all of our beautiful products was the thing that was making it hard for Xeros to work together. And despite really good intentions, of which there were heaps, and there always are heaps, we were starting to face a little bit of inefficiency and ineffectiveness. And ultimately, all of that was starting to handbrake our really big aspirations to continue our growth trajectory and be really well set up for continued innovation and operational excellence. Okay, so what did we do about it? I'm going to leave most of that story to Malpass here, and shout out to DJ. There's your feature slide, DJ. Again, working hand in hand with our product people, over 90 of them actually were involved in our first version of what Malpass will talk about in a second. We started mapping out our product development process at Xero. At the time, that was known as PAM, the Product Activity Map, but PAM for short, and affectionately so. And in doing this, what we became aware of is where we had really awesome stuff happening in the organization and where we had points of commonality that we knew that we could leverage to develop a more common approach to how we were doing things around here. That said, we found there wasn't actually that much in common, and we talk quite often at Xero about things being consistently inconsistent. I'll get that the right way around. So from there, what we did was we further leveraged all of the great collective kind of hive mind at Xero. You know, look, we're really blessed with a workforce that has vast experience from many previous lives at places like Google and Amazon, Facebook, Intuit. So we kind of knew the answers already existed in our people, and we were really keen to leverage both their career experience and their voices to figure out how we work at Xero as we continue to grow. And just before I hand over to Malpass, another little shout out to the other thing that was really important in our journey so far. We have amassed an incredibly talented product practice and coaching team around the globe, and those are some of their faces there. You know, look, acknowledging that a framework and tooling can only take us so far, we knew that our special sauce was always going to be a strong global team of passionate humans who were really set on this mission to help Xeros grow, innovate, and succeed together. So with that set up, I'm going to hand over to Malpass, who's going to talk a little bit more about what we have created together.
Thank you, Michelle. So the first sort of artifact that we have created is what we call our product and technology principle. So this is a sort of quite a massive achievement for Xero, because it was a moment where our technology organization and our product organization came together and agreed on something. And I don't know what your organizations look like, but sometimes that's that they don't come often. So this was a really great achievement for us. Our product and tech principles are really our way of declaring what's important to us and act as a guiding light as we work towards our vision together. They're enduring, and they're the DNA that sort of is intertwined through the beautiful software that we create together as Xeros. So looking at the product and tech principles, they're really important because they're not just a sort of artifact that we've read, that we slap up on posters and then forget. These are something that we refer to often. We use them. We have a value called challenge, #challenge. We use these to challenge ourselves and challenge the status quo to make sure what we're doing is the best that it possibly could be. There are 6 of these product principles, recently endorsed by Marty Kagan, by the way. I got the opportunity to speak to him last week, which was super exciting, massive fanboy moment. And he said, these are great. These are exactly what you need. So fall in love with the customer problem. This is an obvious one, but I think the important thing here is that it's the whole organization, right? Like often that's the designer or the product manager, but we want our engineers falling in love with the customer problem as well. We want them to really understand that and then to be able to apply their technical sort of nous to solve that problem. Test, learn, refine. Another one that is really important. You know, I think globally the stats are, I think 80% of what Amazon does works well. I think, and they're considered gold standard by way of experimentation. Microsoft is something like 50%, but it's acknowledging that not everything will work every time, and actually it's fine to fail. In fact, it's great to fail, because if you fail at this stage, you don't waste a bunch of effort and resource sort of putting out the door. So test, learn and refine, form hypotheses, see if they work or not. Product is a team sport. Again, a really crucial one. We've struggled as an organisation, as I'm sure every organisation has in the last 2 years, to really get that sense of team. You know, we've all been working from, me in particular, my front room, but anywhere in your home, and really that connectedness has sort of gone. The thing that we used to have just by showing up to work and sitting next to people is gone. So really focusing on making sure that product is a team sport. Deliver seamless experiences. Like we're a massive organisation. We have, I think, 135 by the last count, pods or teams. We don't want our customers to see that when they show up. We don't want it to look like a piece of software that's been created by 135 teams. So we need it all to come together into a single experience. So we don't want to expose that we are what we are sort of in the background, and we want to deliver those seamless experiences. Prioritize courageously, something that historically we're not great at, but we're getting better at. This is about, prioritization for me is always about what you say no to. And we need to get better at saying no to stuff so that we can focus on the most impactful things that we can be doing. And then finally, build things that thrive. We are an organization which is the size that can have multiple things at different stages in the life cycle. And so we want to sort of build, deliver, operate, and then, sunset sort of beautifully when they're sort of finished their life cycle. So building things that thrive. These are our product and tech principles, and they're a really important thing that we use on a day-to-day basis to keep us honest. The next artifact, the quick click was that, I'm taking too long. Xero product framework. This is something that we've developed. It's a visual representation of the product lifecycle. There is a map, which some of you would have seen, but I've intentionally chosen not to present it here because we don't feel like that is how it should be digested. It looks like a left to right waterfall process, and that in fact is not what it is. It's a blueprint for effective collaboration. It maps out the 5 phases of our product delivery lifecycle. So understand, define, develop, deliver, and nurture. And then it has an underlying one called foundation. And it maps out all the activities that you might do during that lifecycle. If we go to the next slide, please. So each of those phases, there was 6, has one or more activity. And this is effectively what it looks like. Each activity card has a name, a description, some outcomes. This is what you need to be looking to achieve when you're attacking that activity. And then it has the list of people that you need to collaborate on in order to get that outcome. So we have a core group, they're the people that must be involved, and then supporting groups. So these are people that you can call on in order to achieve those outcomes. We sort of think of this a little bit like a pilot's checklist. So, a pilot, every time they take off, they go through that checklist and they make sure that they've done everything. And that's what we expect of our teams. When they attack an activity like this, they look at the outcomes and they go, how are we going against them? Next slide, please. So through experimentation, I see Mel at the back there. Thank you, Mel. Doing a lot of experimentation. We have sort of landed on these 4 steps for how you start using the framework. So the first one is identify your product and your team of 4. There's a popularized sort of concept called the product trio, which is your product manager, your product designer, and your lead engineer. At Xero, we've included the product marketing manager into that trio to make them, is that a quad? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. So we identify our team of 4 and our product. We get that group together and then we look at the Xero product framework. So as I say, it's a big map, but actually it demonstrates the product lifecycle as you go, and you will be working on probably more than one of those activities at any one time. But pick the one that you want to have the conversation about. The previous example was the launch plan. Then sit down and have a conversation about those outcomes. First off, check to see whether they're relevant in your context. It's an extensive list. built up from the knowledge of those 148 zeros that have helped put it together, but they may not all be relevant. You don't need to go through every single one. We expect you to have a conversation about it. Go through it, see which ones are relevant, and then assign someone to it. This is how we do roles and responsibilities at Xero. We don't have races. We go through in the moment and go, this person needs to be doing this outcome, this person needs to be doing this outcome. It could be a role, but we prefer a name. And then think about how you're going to achieve it. So have a conversation about that. And then that then forms a little bit of a plan about how you might attack every activity. I keep saying attack. We're not a very violent organization. I should point that out. I don't know why I'm saying attack. Can someone give me a better word? And then finally, and this is the last point, document your progress. As you go through those activities, as you achieve those outcomes, document it so that it can be shared with other people, so that people understand what you've done and what you want to do next. So next, the final piece of the puzzle, we call these practices. So these are a list of sort of sensible defaults as to how you might achieve those outcomes. They are not prescriptive. You can use them or not use them. They basically say, this is where you want to use them. They give you the basic steps. They give you the person that you could reach out to if you've got further questions. And then finally, they have things like templates or examples so that you can go and get up to speed. I probably need to go a bit faster. So next, our vision for 2025. So what does this look like for Xero's as we've sort of embedded this and it's all going well? So first off, when you join a new team at Xero, there will be a common language and it's easy to start adding value quickly. So we're looking at this two ways. One, new starters, we want to get them into the artifacts early in the journey. We want to make that part of the induction process. And secondly, by doing it, people will start to form that common language, and then it will make it easier to work across those nuclear teams, as Michelle pointed out. We want people to be able to grow and upskill and become the best and brightest in their disciplines. And we believe firmly in sort of learning by doing. We won't and haven't created an academy of things that you need to go through that will give you a certificate at the end. Instead, we're going to encourage people to try things, look at the practices, have a go, talk to the coaches, see what might work, what might not, but learning by doing. Next, collaboration is seamless across teams and functions. So this is, particularly, and I've said it a few times now, in this sort of pandemic age, and we don't sit together anymore, not all the time at least. And it's really had a knock-on collaboration. But we want to figure out how to do this in 2022 and make sure that Xero has this as their superpower, because as we all know, that sort of collaboration between, or meeting of minds between design and technology and product is where the magic happens, and we want to make that something that we do sort of in our sleep almost. So teams are empowered to find solutions for customers and not just ship a list of features. So Xero's will be given guardrails and then permission to go and figure out how to create value for customers. Next slide. Access to customer research and insights. So we do a bunch of customer research here at Xero. We want to sort of democratize that and package that up. So when people have a burning question, they can go and check and see what we've already learned about that. And if the learning's not there, then they can go and talk to customers, but really so that everyone can empathize with their customers and use that empathy to build great customer solutions. And then finally, when you run into a problem, there's an easy to use and vast network of resources for you to get help. So that's, written resources, but also people. I think to Michelle's point, that's really important. We've got this network of 40 odd coaches. Go and talk to them. They'll have an idea about how you can get the help that you need to do the thing that you need to do. I think I'm done.
Awesome. So look, we've got a bit of work ahead for this. So we can't pretend at all that this is done, and I don't think it ever will be. As we said before, we're growing pretty quickly. So actually we've got new people here all of the time. But what we're thinking about very specifically is making sure that we are bringing clarity to the way that we work so that we continue to do what we do. We are thinking about streamlining that activity to create more transparency. We want to make sure we do those things in a way that leaves plenty of room for experimentation, because we know that that's where the creativity comes into play. And we want to set up an environment that really allows people to do that as beautifully as they can. And look, we're really conscious that we need to make sure that we've got fast feedback loops in everything that we do, so that people are having the conversations that need to be had and we're feeling like we're leveling up together. As you see there, we've got a stretch goal in place that says 80% of our teams globally are going to be using XPF this year. It is a stretch goal because, in an organization where people have felt quite proud of their autonomy, it's going to be a really interesting, challenge to get them to be adopting the bits that make sense. And that is something that we've got our coaches really keenly tuned into, so that we're always showing up with the most valuable and helpful things that we can do for a team. Oh, too fast. And then I guess turning our attention to some of the newer challenges that have arisen. There's a few things we're thinking about. David's already touched on it, but the last 2 years have brought about really significant changes in the way that we do our work. We are thinking very deliberately about how our asynchronous work needs to show up in this, and what we can do to support people to better work asynchronously. Our leadership team, to give you an example, has 4 hours a week where we are all on for work and we're all in working hours, which is just really, really hard. That's a constraint that we've really had to practically get our heads around. And so we are really experimenting fast with how to get good asynchronous work going. The other thing that we're thinking about is that sense of connectedness. So how do you, when people are working in hybrid ways, keep that really strong sense of team and belonging and connectedness? Because when you get that right, the team can do pretty much anything together. It's a really special thing to be a part of, and we want to make sure that we don't lose that. And then the other thing that is top of mind here at Xero always is our well-being. So how do we do what we do in a way that really protects people's well-being? Because if, in addition to #challenge, we have #human as a core value here at Xero, and it's really important that our people are feeling good as they're doing their great work. Okay, so it'd be remiss of me not to shout out that we have a careers page if any of you are interested in joining Xero. So I'll just leave that there. But thank you very much for the opportunity to share a little bit about our story today. Happy World Product Day. It's really exciting to be kicking this off. And big shout out to everybody who's tuned in online as well. I am now going to hand over, I think.
All right, thanks so much. Okay, next up we have our second speaker, Taz from Flow Software, who's going to tell us about her journey into leadership just as soon as we get the slide shared. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Steph. All right. Excellent, there we go. All right, welcome Taz.
Hi. I'm an ex-Xero, but I think everyone in New Zealand is a past or future or current Xero at some point in time. So, yeah. So, hi, my presentation is nothing as polished as this for a start. So please bear with. The brief for me, so it's the theme for World Product Day is firsts. And I have just completed 1 year as head of product, my first head of product role. And I thought, well, Anthony and I cooked up the scheme to scare everyone into how terrible this role actually is. So I'm going to tell you all about it. So first year, and I put HOP there, but I'm assuming everyone here knows that means head of product. Okay, so my product journey, my first official product role was actually with Orion Health way back in 2014. That was almost foundational. I met some amazing people that I'm still in touch with today. But there was a lot of growth at Orion at that point in time. product practice wasn't even a thing. It had just been introduced. So it was kind of Wild West, which was great. I got to do whatever I wanted in the name of product ownership. But over time, it formalized into something that was really good. We got to put our stamp on it. It's almost like, how Michelle and David were talking about the operational stuff. We all kind of got stuck in and did it ourselves. We didn't have product coaches back then. We were like, oh, this is something we need to do for our area. Let's do it. So it was super great as a learning experience. Then I went for a little while to SLI systems. And that was a whole different thing. E-commerce, something I'd never worked in before. Very different. It was an old product that was transitioning to something entirely new, API backed. They were rewriting the entire platform. And about 6 months into that role, an American company came in, acquired us, kicked us all out. So I went to Deloitte. Actually, I went to Xero in between, but yeah. So Deloitte was very different again. And the reason I have these milestones on the journey, because I learned something really important at each of these. So what I learned at SLI Systems was really about getting deep into the strategy and thinking about the product lifecycle and all of the different customers. We did a whole lot of customer interviews and market validation so that we could decide where we wanted to go. Deloitte was different again. It's very different to how software operates. I had only ever worked for a software company before, and it's different. It's great, actually, because you get to see a lot of different, how inside and under the hood of a lot of different businesses, how they operate, how they think about strategy. And you do learn a lot. It's very fast. It's really rushed. But about the time COVID hit and COVID really embedded, I did realize that the kind of really fast pace is not it, but just really kind of, rushed working culture at Deloitte wasn't quite my thing. And for a while, I decided to do my own thing. So I did two things at the same time. One was that I was head of product as a temporary role for a startup called Nearby, which had started out with an idea. As most startups, I have an idea. I'm going to build some software. I'm going to hire a team in India. And then they were like, I don't know what I'm doing. Someone help me. So I went in and we put together a plan and started getting them underway and got them into an incubator, And then alongside that, so in 2018, when this American company came in and decided to buy SLI Systems, they had 3 months of due diligence to do. During those 3 months, we were all expected to show up at work and look serious, but we weren't allowed to do any work. We weren't allowed to touch anything. We weren't allowed to touch the code in case we messed up anything. So for 3 months, we turned up, we walked around the office, gossiped a bit, went out to lunch, had a long lunch. For someone who's used to doing things all the time, you can only do that for a little while, and then you're like, I need to do something else with my life. So me and someone else, one of the other product managers there, she's a good friend, we decided to start up a trading business because I feel like there's nothing in New Zealand that does that. So we had kind of dabbled in that for a little while, but I thought that it was a really good time to kind of give that a go by itself. So I spent a good 6 months doing that, which worked really well. And that was actually my flick where, hey, I can actually do this. I'm good at this. I'm coaching other people on how to do stuff. And also 6 months in, I realized that I get very bored when I don't have other people to tell what to do. So decided to go find a job where I could tell other people what to do. And that's how I ended up as head of product at Flow Software. So yeah, I didn't start my career in 2014, in spite of how young I look. I worked at a few different places around town as well before that. So I did have a few years experience going into my first product role. So I want to talk to you a little bit about Flow Software and where we are, because that will help you understand my journey as well. I'm sure lots of you have seen this picture. You have a plan, and that's how it looks like from the outside. But actually, there's a whole pile of things in between you and your goal. This is true not just for people, but for businesses as well. So this is Flow Software's journey. This is all cards on the table kind of thing. So when I first started up 15, 18 odd years ago, it was a startup with lots of potential. It was growing fast. It had lots of customers. They initially started out as a bit of a services business and then moved to a product business. I'm sure lots of people in the audience know how that feels. And then it got to a point where they had, a whole bunch of customers. Financials were stable, but there wasn't really a lot of growth going on. That product had started to get to end of life. And around that time, COVID hit as well. So there was a bit of a restructure, new leadership, new board members, and they decided that what they needed was new strategy, new direction, breathe new life into the product. One of the ways that they decided to do that was to kind of change how they looked at taking product to market and decide to invest in some customer-centric, product-led culture and thinking. And so they hired me. Crazy. So obviously when I walked in, there was a lot to do, and they never really had proper product roles before. And everyone had completely different expectations of what I was going to achieve. There's some people who were super excited and some people who were like, we've tried this before, it's not going to work. So yeah, that is true, but only for my first week. So now I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey of what my first 90 days looked like, because I had to really think hard about, with all of these, different people and expectations, how I wanted to approach this. Anthony will tell you that this is not like me. I'm like quite let's get it done. Let's jump in. So this is the first time I actually stopped and think about something. It was, yeah. Having said all of that, I'm quite a process-driven person. So I've never really started anything without putting together a 30, 60, 90-day plan. And I tend to break that down into, at least in product, I find this useful up and down the stack, which is learn about the people, learn about the market and what business we are in, learn the product itself, because every product person should know a lot about how their product operates. The tools and systems that the business uses, and of course, the processes that all of the different people around us have. I split that plan into two areas, learning and doing. So for each 30 days, I would do this is what I'm going to learn, and this is what I'm going to do section. And at the end of those 90 days, I did all these things. I used all of that to focus on doing these outcomes. So built out a bit of a product vision, brand, and UVP. I will say that it was a first draft and we kind of revisit that quite regularly. Talk to you a little bit about that as well. I built their first ever roadmap and started building some scaffolding for going to market. So they didn't really have they had a marketing function, but it wasn't really up to scratch. Considering I think my standards are high. I've worked in some amazing places before. So, yeah. So some of the things that I had to think about was how I would, it was all very well for the board to say, oh, we need product-led mindset in the business. But then it became my job to champion it across the business. Nobody knew what that means. I'm still doing that to this day. And so the most important thing for me to do, if I was going to do that, if I was going to be customer-centric, was to actually lead by example and learn about customers, but also my team. My team is not just the people who are working on product or the people who report to me. It's also my peers in the leadership team and my boss and the board, all of the people who are going to pull together to make this ship turn around. I did my first board presentation ever, which was like crazy nerve-wracking, but I got handed marketing at the end of it. So I don't know if that was a win or not yet, but actually, no, I will say this, to be honest. I've seen this happen with other clients as well. I did mention the training thing, right? Yeah, I've seen this happen that, 20 years ago, if you talk to someone who was a product manager, it was likely that they were in marketing rather than in product. Software has changed that quite a lot, but I feel like maybe that circle is coming around a little bit, and product manager, like going from that bit where they build and deliver to actually you have to understand the market and the customers. And to do that, you have to work really closely with marketing. So seeing marketing as part of that squad of 4 is actually really just bringing home that little fact to me. So think about that one. I think if you are going to, I guess, think about where you want to expand your skill set, marketing might not be a bad place to look at. And then making the first hire. So as I mentioned, marketing wasn't quite up to scratch. So part of that, let's redo what's happening in marketing, was a little bit of a restructure and hiring new people into the business. So that was definitely a win. My marketing managers, amazing. Yeah. Okay, so this is where I am 1 year on. We've taken 2 new products to market. What we have now is actually a vision and a strategy for the business. We are focusing on things rather than just building and hoping for that organic growth that we had in the first few years. Because while the company is used to that, that's not how the world operates anymore. So you actually have to have some focus. And that thinking has been the hardest to kind of bring into the business. On the back of that, we are working on some market validation in Australia. We're doing a whole bunch of things to really embed that customer-centric thinking. So we have set up a customer portal. We're doing regular customer communication, surveys, all of that good stuff. We are rebuilding our entire documentation to go from extremely technical, boring stuff to, hey, if our audience is, made up of these types of personas, what kind of documentation do they need to do their job well? I'm working on kickstarting a community program, which is another first. I have not done that before. If anyone has experience in that, please come and talk to me. I would love to pick your brains. And then the other thing that, I did mention before that I'm a really boring process person. I am all about frameworks. And I think that having some good guidelines in place sets expectations for what to do and, what some sort of standards should be. So that is what I am trying to put into the business, right through from what are we building to how are we going to take this to market. That's just me. Boring. Okay. And then if I had a time machine, so I am working on building one, but I don't have one right now. But if I did have one, I would do this first. This is something, and I guess I'm putting this on here because if you guys, as you're growing in your career, you go to your next role, you go to your next, just kind of what I would say learn from my mistakes would be. So I think that one of the things that all of us need to do is that storytelling piece. What is my story? What am I bringing to this role? If this role has never existed before, how am I going to communicate the value of it? I think that day one pitch, if I had, really understood that at the start, that would have helped me quite a lot. That would have got me to where I wanted to be faster. And just have a really clear plan. This one was really important for me. Balance enthusiasm with patience. We talk about this all the time in product. We're like, work in the problem space, don't jump to solutioning. And yet it's really hard to kind of do that for yourself, to recognize that as soon as you hear a problem, you don't want to say, oh, I had this problem when I was at blah, blah, and this is what we did. No, you actually want to sit down and think about it because this is a very different business. And what worked somewhere else doesn't work here. So I did have to kind of start really pulling back on just sit back and listen and then figure out what you're going to do. And therefore, a lot of that was also about this thing, building trust. We talk a lot about working with people who trust you, you can trust them. And we had to build it on both sides of the equation and just building a little bit of, credit for what product management can bring into the business. And this goes back a little bit to what I was saying before. There is a whole history. There's a whole bunch of customer experiences and relationships that you don't know about when you walked in on day one. And it's really important to understand that, leverage those before you can start making decisions, especially as you're thinking about strategy and vision and things like that, things that the business haven't had. You can't do that without really understanding this well. And this took me a long time to even learn that I could walk into a customer interview and then get hit with a question that I was not prepared for. So that was a learning experience. And this one's a little bit of a balance between like focus on your stuff, but also learn about how the rest of the business works. Because I have seen this happen where things that you thought were other people's problems or dysfunction in other departments kind of tend to overflow as well. So just have a think about that. Make sure that you're, yeah, I guess at a certain leadership level, there's no such thing as, oh, that's not my area or that's not my responsibility. You kind of have to support everyone, including other leaders in the business in some respect if you can. My number one learning actually has been this, and this has been really hard for me because I'm just like a jump in and do things person. And that's how I got to where I am. I had to totally change that mindset and say, this isn't about me. This isn't about me doing a task. There's too much on the damn table for me to do by myself. I need this team to help me. And so now the first thing I ask myself is, who can I give this to? Who's the best suited person to do this in terms of temperament or experience? And then how can I give them as much information or the tools that they need to do the best possible job? This is really a big mind shift. This was kind of the biggest thing for me, just moving into that leadership space. So when you are in this position, increase your chances of success. Just move. This mindset shift is kind of the biggest thing. If you've got that already, congratulations, because like this is the thing that I think has been the hardest one for me. Have a goal and plan for each stage. We talk a lot about being outcome driven and not output driven. And this is really another way where the rubber hits the road in that same concept. Think about what you want to achieve for the business and have that plan. Because there's so much to do, there's a lot of little learnings that you have to do. You have to build in the time for that. Try and make team communication easier. I walked into a business where everyone is very different from me personality-wise. So I had to do one-on-ones with everyone to understand how they like to work. But also I had to communicate to people how I liked working. I get bored with detail easily. I like thinking about how we can do big picture stuff. I like being communicated in a certain way. I'm a very visual person. Not many other people in the business are like that. So I had to find the balance on how I would, communicate with people, not how I wanted to hear the message, but how they wanted to hear the message, and kind of set those expectations vice versa as well. And last but not the least, I am super lucky to have amazing mentors and coaches. I've worked with some amazing people. I try and keep in touch. I don't appreciate them publicly as much as I should. So here's to all my mentors and coaches, because without you, I would not have done this. I kept running into problems. I would go and have a coffee and then I would feel so much better afterwards. So really, they are the people who've got me through this. And I would say this is the one thing you should do if you want to kind of move forward and move your thinking forward. It's not going to be easy. There's a lot of learning, mostly from other people. And so the thing here is that it's, at some point you got to back yourself and say, I do know some stuff as well. But at the same time, there is an opportunity to say, we never stop learning. And that's the thing. I have to keep reminding myself, what am I going to learn today? Work with you too. I'm talking a lot about other people, right? Like this is all about people. People, look at your managers, look at your mentors, look at your colleagues, look at what you can learn from other people, and believe in yourself. So this speaks a little bit to the whole imposter syndrome thing. Remember that other people have looked at you and said, okay, I think you're someone who can do this job. Someone else has already invested in you. Believe in yourself. Go find the support if you need it, because it's probably, you have the capacity to do it. Just go figure out how you want to build that capability, make it happen. That's it. That was very boring. Okay. And that was me. Yeah, I think, so yeah, I was super, like my first role, super stressed out, but I am a lot more relaxed now. I would never have worn flats to work a year ago. That was not me, but here you go. This is me now. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Taz. If we can have our speakers back up, we'll do a very, very, very short Q&A because we're starting to run up to the top of the hour. Do we have any questions from the room? Silence. Do you have any questions in the chat? No. Geez, you must have done an amazing job, Taz. You covered everything. David and Michelle, you guys must have also done a fantastic. Oh, here we go. Right, awesome. And if I could just play for time, we'd get some questions. Aaron. Okay, for those online, the question was, when you move into a new role, sometimes you want to keep the stuff that's important to you and not budge on that, and things you need to be there are some things you also need to be flexible on. How did that work with you, Taz?
One of the things I said I wouldn't change was how I like to operate. When I decided that I was going to go look for a role, I knew what kind of company I wanted to work for. And I decided to be very upfront and extra, if you like, in the interview. So they knew exactly what I was getting, because I did not want to work for a particularly, at least post Deloitte, a particularly structured of this is how we do things kind of business. So I did make sure that people knew that when they were getting someone who was like opinionated and would get things done for them, but would and that's what they should expect. That's what I was not going to change, because that's how I do my best work. What I did change is a lot about me doing things, me charging ahead and making things happen. I basically now have to consult with loads of people, because even if I think I'm making changes in the product, in how dev works, whatever it is, there are flow-on effects everywhere else. And so those are the things I have changed, always just keeping that in mind. Thank you, Aaron.
It's a very good question, Aaron. Thank you. Next question we have online, and this is for the Xero folks. And this is a really, really good question as well. One from Gloria. Within Xero, can you speak to some of the practices that are driving to create amazing collaboration in the current climate? Basically, how are you getting the collaboration going?
Yeah, I sure can, or at least I can speak to the top 3 practices that we have at the moment, which are all around collaboration. So our top 3 in no particular order is async working. So that one's really been very popular, and there's clearly a lot of interest from the business as to how to get that working well. There's also managing multi-team initiatives. Toby Delamore over there, the author of that particular practice. So that's one that's really about how do you get things, and he's working on US sales tax in particular. So how do you get things that cut across many teams working together in unison? So that's been super popular. And then our final sort of perhaps biggest hitter actually is our collection of well-being practices. So these are ones that are around things like meeting etiquette and putting focus time in your diary, and just generally sort of carving out space for you during the day and carving out space for work during the day, and trying to make sure that they don't blend too much. So those are our top 3 practices, and they all speak in some way, shape or form to how we collaborate at Xero.
Thank you, David. Question there. So as a follow-on question, how to basically what else is happening around collaboration, particularly in the field of async?
I mean, this is a great one, and if I'm brutally honest, we haven't solved it yet, but we are still trying. I think like one of the major learnings is you cannot rely exclusively on async. You need to make time for synchronous as well. So because async, one of our problems is that we have people around the clock, basically. Like there's people in the UK that don't have any crossover time with with people in New Zealand. In fact, the UK teams are the ones really driving our async practices, because for them, they feel the pain, right? That they're away from. We have this sort of the concept of the further away from Wellington you are. It's almost how we segment our Xeros, and so they've really been pioneering them. We have a sort of a methodology where we use Confluence. You make posts, you comment on them, and you have sort of like that asynchronous sort of dialogue. Like you might post something and then overnight someone will reply. And so you have that sort of sequence. So the things that are really important is make sure you always reply. Like if you leave it for the day, like it's 5 o'clock and I haven't replied to that post yet, even just post, hey, I haven't had a chance to look yet. Sorry, I'll look tomorrow. Because when you leave people hanging like that, it can be quite off-putting and make people not want to lean into that asynchronous, and then making sure there is time, because things get lost in translation. We've definitely noticed that. People miss the point. So make sure that there is time baked into your week to actually meet and talk sort of face-to-face about what's going on. Sure. So the question was, do you find it easier for some teams and not others? I think it's easier for some activities. So it's really easy for an engineer, like you can write a bunch of user stories and then, you know, people can pick up those user stories, and like they're used to sort of working on that. So if you're thinking of the sort of the product life cycle, the work on the far right is much easier for async, but getting it working on the far left, the sort of the discovery, like that's where that sort of meeting of minds is really important. That is where we are sort of experimenting. So the people leading the async work at Xero are designers based out of the UK. And we're trying really hard to get that to work. It isn't as fast. It definitely is not. So for someone who is who likes speed, it can be a little bit frustrating, but we are getting to a point where it's better than it was. But if I'm honest, we haven't yet solved it. It is definitely an area of focus for us.
Cool. Right. So question in the chat. So don't go away, David, because this is another one for you. From Tim, keen to understand how roadmaps are used at Xero, especially to aid communication between teams. Do you have a standard roadmap? Do you have a standard format? Do you aggregate them into mega roadmaps? Mega roadmap.
This is a great question. Like roadmaps is an area where we have let people sort of do what they want, so that is relatively sort of autonomous, and we have pockets of amazing road mapping happening across Xero, and then we have pockets of, you know, the other sort of roadmaps. We are actively working on fixing this. We're looking at sort of quarterly planning as a major initiative for Xero this calendar year, and that will encompass how we do road mapping. Like we need sort of that Uber roadmap, like that's an artifact that we need and that our leaders need to be able to see. So that's an area that we're working on. But to very briefly answer the question, yes, we do have lots of different ways of doing road mapping in the organisation, and we are looking to standardise on one or maybe a couple of different ways at that sort of portfolio level, and then perhaps let people do what they want to do at the team level.